You're listening to Simply the Best. Great companions around the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, with Shaykh Sadullah Khan. This podcast is brought to you by Seekers Hub Global. You can subscribe to this podcast and all of our other podcasts on iTunes, Google Play, and on our website, seekershub.fm. Visit seekershub.org for free online courses, our reliable answer service, and engaging media.
The art of conflict resolution. More than that, Hassan ibn Thabit was a poet renowned in the Arab world, a poet who won acclaim in the courts of the Christian Arab Ghassanid kings of the period who patronized him. He traveled often to Syria and Iraq to render panegyrics, a public speech or a published text in praise of someone or something. He was favorite of the then Syrian king Harith ibn Abu Shamir. By the time the Prophet migrated to Yathrib, Medina, Hassan bin Thabit had already settled there and was 60 years of age. He embraced Islam at the first sight of the Prophet and was part of the Ansar, those who helped the migrant Muslims settle in Medina. He became famous for using his poetic skills to reflect his position as an ardent champion for the cause of Islam. Once the Prophet ﷺ settled in Medina and the Muslims were able to ward off the military attacks at Badr, Uhud and Khandaq, the detractors of the Prophet and the enemies of faith were very perturbed. Diplomatic and military success of the Prophet led the enemies and the Quraysh to try an alternate form of attack. Attack on Islam and Muslims, and more particularly on the Prophet. They launched a character assassination and a vicious campaign of satire against the Prophet and his followers. This campaign was led by highly influential men at that time like Abu Sufyan, Abdullah ibn Zibara, and Adirar ibn al-Khattab al-Fihri. As the situation became intolerable, the Prophet, in consultation with his companions, decided to respond to their satirical attacks with poetic resistance. You see, propaganda is the spreading of ideas, information, or rumor for the purpose of helping or injuring an institution, a cause, or a person. A form of persuasion used to influence people's attitudes, their beliefs, and behavior. Propaganda then, as today, is so powerful because everyone is susceptible to its influence. Populations could be manipulated, and consent for economic, social, political, and religious policies can be manufactured in the public mind if there is effective propaganda and if the media, whatever the means of media is far-reaching enough. The power of persuasion through propaganda and the power of media can never ever be overestimated. At that time, poetry was a medium and poetry was the means of propaganda. Hassan bin Thabit defended the Prophet and the faith by his eloquence and was undoubtedly the poet laureate of the early Muslim community. The Prophet would often ask him to recite poetry on his pulpit in Medina in defense of Islam. His poetry was based on his sincere appreciation of reality as he saw it, and it incorporated aesthetic and rhythmic qualities of language, of sound symbolism, of meter, reflecting various levels of meaning and evoking emotive responses. Some of his poems regarding the Prophet were majestic, magnanimous expressions of love. الصبح بدا من طلعته والليل دجا من وفرته كنز الكرم مولى النعم هادي الأمم لشريعته. The light of dawn is from the radiance of his face. The sparkle of the night is from the glimmer of his hair. He is the treasure of grace, the administrator of mercy, the guide of the nation towards the law of the divine. Some of the poems in defense of his stance in respect of the Prophet were less rhythmic and more conversational, yet poetic. قيامي للعزيز علي فرض وترك الفرض ما هو مستقيم عجبت لمن له عقل وفهم يرى هذا الجمال ولا يقوم. It is necessary for me to stand when I see my dear friend, the Prophet Muhammad. Refusing to stand for me is not the right way. I am surprised at those who possess intellect and understanding, who witness such splendor and beauty, yet do not stand. Among the most famous odes in praise of the Prophet ﷺ recited worldwide are these words penned by Hassan bin Thabit. وَأَحْسَنُ مِنْكَ لَمْ تَرَى قَطُّ عَيْنِي وَأَجْمَلُ مِنْكَ لَمْ تَلِدِ النِّسَاء خلقت مبرأ من كل عيب كأنك قد خلقت كما تشاء. Better than you, O Muhammad, no eye has ever seen. More beautiful than you, no woman has given birth to. You are free from any defects of character, as if you are designed according to your own specification. It was said of Hassan ibn Thabit, who breathed his last in Medina at the time of the fourth Caliph, at the age of 120. He lived 60 years before receiving Islam and lived 60 years in Islam. They said of Hassan, he is huwa al-hajiz bayn al-mu'mineen wal-munafiqeen. He is a barrier between the believers and the hypocrites. Hassan ibn Thabit's expertise was his poetic skill, his eloquence, which he used most effectively to defend the honor of the Prophet and the image of Islam. What many could not do with the sword, he did with his words, and he is the most quoted companion of the Prophet. Among his famous sayings were, ما مدحت محمد بمقالة ما مدحت محمدا بمقالة ولكن مدحت مقالتي بمحمد. I could not praise Muhammad with my words, rather my words became praiseworthy because I mentioned Muhammad.
Thank you for listening to Simply the Best, Great Companions Around the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, with Shaykh Sadullah Khan. If you liked this podcast, we'd appreciate if you left us a review on iTunes and Google Play. Help Seekers Hub build a global Islamic seminary and spread the light of guidance to millions around the world by supporting us through monthly donations by going to seekershub.org/donate. Your donations are tax deductible in the US and Canada.